Hi, welcome. Let's kick off. So look, my name's Lisa Fowkes and I'm the Director of Employment at Social Ventures Australia. I want to welcome you to the webinar, and I want to start by acknowledging the country on which I'm coming from. That's the Gadigal country, part of the Eora Nation. I want to pay my respects to elders past and present, and also acknowledge the different lands on which people who are joining this webinar are coming from today. So thank you so much for joining us on the webinar. I'll invite my fellow panellists to turn on their videos and we'll get going. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the genesis of this webinar, just by way of background. So Social Ventures Australia for quite a long time has been concerned about deteriorating economic opportunities for young people, and particularly those young people who come from less privileged backgrounds, those people who don't go to university or who face some obstacle to employment. So in Australia, even though we see ourselves as the land of the fair go, if you're born into one of our poorer families, you are more than 5 times more likely to be unemployed or out of education at age 24 as someone from a wealthier family. So in Australia, it really matters the circumstances into which you're born. If you're born into a poorer family, it is harder to get ahead. And one of the things that's really worrying is that some of these trends are worsening. So the Productivity Commission looked in 2018, and what they showed is that at what was happening to incomes of young people, and they showed that from 2018, the incomes of young people were declining relative to older workers. And the reasons for that were really around the quality of jobs that they were getting. So young people were getting jobs that don't give them enough hours, but also that are less skilled jobs. So they're lower paid jobs and they're climbing the career ladder more slowly. And the most affected are those people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, those who don't go to university. In fact, the Productivity Commission talks about young people from university getting onto the career ladder further down and climbing more slowly, and young people without university degrees getting pushed off the ladder altogether. And all of that is happening while we have record low rates of unemployment and skills shortages across the labour market. So we've got this, demand for workers, demand for highly skilled workers, but we've also got a lot of young people who are really finding themselves in jobs that don't use their skills and don't give them the opportunity to grow. So in response to this, Social Ventures Australia has created an initiative called Rebuilding the Career Ladder, and it aims to work with employers to try to help them find ways to create more better quality jobs for young people, and for those young people in particular who are at risk of exclusion, who come from poorer backgrounds. The centrepiece of this work is the Employer Innovation Lab, which is where we work with employers to try to help them identify practice changes within their workplaces. So practical changes that both can create great opportunities for young people, but also create great benefits for their businesses. So we kicked off one of these in Western Melbourne a couple of months ago. And one of the things we do in these workshops is we actually bring in employers who are creating those opportunities for young people. And this time around, we actually created we invited a couple of employers that do that as the heart of what they do. Like, they actually set up to help young people thrive. And we weren't really sure how the employers in the room, who were transport companies and local council and IT company, we weren't quite sure how they would connect with these employers we brought in, who are really, organisations who had this front of mind. But actually what it turned out was that it was incredibly useful, that the insights that those companies shared about their own practices were incredibly valuable for organisations who were thinking about how their company, even though it wasn't set up to do that, might actually also create opportunities for young people. So this webinar has come about because we thought that those ideas were so useful that we wanted to share them with a wider audience. So I'm really pleased today to introduce our panel. So we've got Angela Gyalard, who is the People and Culture Manager at Youth Projects. We've got Andy McManus, who's the Team Leader of Youth Employment Programs at Good Cycles, and also Rahul, who is the Senior Transition Support Worker at STREAT. And what we're going to do today is I'm going to ask each of our panellists some questions about what they do so we can learn a little bit about how they approach creating great workplaces for young workers. And then we're also going to turn it over to you so that you guys can ask some questions and get their insights. So at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a Q&A button. And if you can put any questions in the panel, we'll be really welcoming questions from you for our various panellists. So I'm going to kick off and I'm going to start with Angela. So tell us a bit about Youth Projects and the sorts of roles that you're hiring for, and then perhaps maybe you can start to tell us a bit of some of the things that you've done to create a great workplace for young people at risk of exclusion.
Sure. So Youth Projects is a Melbourne-based not-for-profit. We work across Metro Melbourne, Northwest and Western Melbourne predominantly, providing frontline support to young people and people experiencing homelessness. So we really approach this topic from both a employer perspective. We employ a lot of young people, but also as well support a lot of young people moving into employment or training to help them break that cycle of disadvantage that they're in. I guess from a workplace perspective, we really approach youth employment no different to how we approach employment of any marginalised group. So it's really kind of taking the time to stop, assess our processes and see how they're framed for that group, whether it's as organisations. We've done it for increasing women's participation in workforces. We've done it to increase First Nations people within workforces. So it's now just applying that same lens for young people. So some key things that we really do through that cycle, when we start looking at attracting them, it's understanding where they are, where they're looking for jobs. Young people now aren't as likely to go to Seek or your normal recruitment platforms. So we've worked really hard with our marketing and comms team to engage with young people where they are. So that can look like putting job ads up on TikTok, or being present on Instagram and YouTube where they're engaging with content regularly. So it's making sure that they see the brand, they know the brand, they understand the role. And again, it just comes back to that you can't be what you can't see. So if you're advertising roles or your organisation or your employees and they're not seeing themselves, they're not going to be able to see themselves in those roles. For us.
Sorry, I was just going to say the TikTok thing. So TikTok comes a lot in our conversations when we have the workshop, and I'm afraid that I do spend more time than I should on TikTok, but I don't understand what it looks like to advertise on TikTok and how you might actually use that effectively. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. Look, personally, I'm not at all creative enough to do any of that stuff. We have a fabulous Marcoms team that takes the lead with all of that. But it's really around, so we do a lot of work explaining what our roles are. So if there are roles that we have that are targeted at young people or again, any other group, it's making sure that they're prominent in those videos. For us, it's explaining, what does a youth worker actually do? What does an employment coach actually do in their job? And what skills do they need so that they can then connect with that and start moving down that recruitment pipeline?
One of the other things that you spoke about when we had you in the workshop was about the selection process and how you modified the selection process. So I'd be really keen to hear you talk a little bit about that a bit more.
Yeah, so that really moves, when they start moving into our kind of engagement strategy, we make a really conscious effort to make sure that we're creating a safe environment for them at that interview stage. So it's looking at things like when a young person enters a job interview, this may be their first professional job interview, walking into a room where you're sitting across from a panel of people in corporate outfits. For us is really intimidating. For them is even more intimidating. So it's really putting yourselves in their shoes. And that could be something as simple as wearing a t-shirt, making them feel like they're an equal in that situation rather than having that power dynamic or power imbalance. And also as well, just having a conversation. And these are things that we've now implemented across all groups when we recruit. So it's now not just young people, but having a few set questions that, you need to ask, that you need to assess, but just having that conversation and using that to help them understand their transferable skills or help them connect what they know to how it is for the job. I actually did an interview with a young person a couple of days ago, and we ended up down a rabbit hole of their gaming. I know nothing about gaming, but them gaming shows to us that they can make quick decisions, that they can assess a situation, see a group of moving parts, and be able to put that together and move forward. So it's helping them to understand, and also as well helping our leaders and lead recruiters to understand that those skills can present in different ways, and helping them kind of get that out of them in the interviews.
So how does that fit with the need to create a consistent selection process? So, we know that in order to provide equality of opportunity, we also need to have some, consistency in interviews. Yep. So how does that marry up?
So before we start our interviews, we have kind of our key behaviours and outcomes that we want from the interview. It's just the path that you take to get there. So, all of those things are still there, but instead of rattling off these really structured behavioural questions that young people and other people can't connect with, or panic because they've been taught at school that they've got to answer the question in a certain way, and if they miss a bit, their mind goes blank. Approaching that from a different way.
And so, tell us about why you implemented it right across the organisation. Why did you see that as important for other groups as well?
We get a better outcome. So for us, we have a really values-based recruitment process. As an organisation with the work we do, lived experience is really important for us, so that we know that our staff can connect with our clients and have that added level of empathy and understanding. So having that approach just really, you see the person. People feel more comfortable to be vulnerable. People feel more comfortable to be honest. So they're not answering the questions and saying what they think you want. If they don't think they're good at something, they actually tell you in those conversations. And even there, if they are successful, you already have the start of a development plan for them, because they've already self-identified those areas where their skills may not be as strong or they may want to work on.
Fantastic. Look, we'll come back to you, Angela, and I'm sure that some of our audience will have some questions for you, but I wanted to move on to Andy from Good Cycles. So, Andy, can you tell us a bit about Good Cycles and sorts of jobs you're recruiting people into? And same question, how do you set the that process of recruiting and employing young people up for success?
Yeah, definitely. Well, great to be here, number one. I'll give you a little bit of background on Good Cycles. So very exciting. We just turned 10 years this year. And that 10 years has actually been, it's brought about some pretty amazing changes. I think the metrics we have is around, over 700 people who've been able to be connected with training and employment opportunities in that 10 years. We have our youth employment program, which is what I sit on, which is a program that focuses on, connecting young people with not only employment opportunities, but meaningful employment opportunities that really focuses on safety, comfortability in the workplace, and flexibility when approaching employment. All of the young people we bring in on the youth employment program have faced barriers in one way or another, or an intersectionality of these barriers. And what we're really trying to do is support that young person to engage with a workplace, have good, meaningful employment that pays adult award wages, but also looks forward to the young person's career pathway and how we can help them to skill up in the current role they may be in, but how those skills also transfer to whatever they may be looking at down the track. And some roles that we're able to offer, we're actually, really lucky to have a wide range of roles we can recruit young people into. We have some retail sites. We have 2 bike shops, one down in Geelong and one in Brunswick. We also have a bike hub down in Docklands, but these sites allow opportunities for hands-on, say, bike mechanic tasks, as well as retail experience as well. And that augmented role is really good for addressing and building a wide range of skills, including just socialization, both in the workplace, but in a customer-facing way as well. On top of that, we have a commercial gardening and landscaping arm of the business. And this is where young people can learn skills around, using a front deck mower, also just getting out and about, using your brush cutter, your push mowers as well, and can be really good for those young people seeking those hands-on skills. In addition to that, we also have our North Melbourne site where our bike services run out of. And this is really what Good Cycles was built around, as using the bicycle as a tool to enact change in the community around it, positive change. And this is from this site, we offer roles that one of my favorites and one of my first exposures to Good Sites was seeing this e-bike moving around the CBD with a big trailer on the back. And this is where young people will go around and collect organic food waste, which then ends up on this trailer and is taken to a central processing site in the city. So there's a lot of aspects involved in that client-facing work, being out and about, navigating the CBD streets, and a couple of other programs that are similar. We maintain some solar bins around the city, and also complete other tasks on the bikes, like bike path inspections and maintenance. And a new arm of the business that is emerging at the moment is something called Good Logistics, which is like a last mile delivery service, which is really creating opportunities for young people, but also addressing the modern cityscape and how hard it can be to move a vehicle around that. In terms of recruiting people into these roles and making sure that we set them up for success, we really try to start with matching a young person's skills to the role, rather than rushing towards, filling a position with, just anyone. We really do try to work out what the young person's trying to achieve, what skills they already have, but what skills they would like to build on through engaging with the youth employment program. And really trying to match those up, as well as offering a variety of opportunities across all these sites and programs, if it turns out that a young person sees a skill set they would like to develop further on another program.
So part of what we're keen to do here is draw out insights from your practice, which is deeply engaged across that extraordinary variety of types of roles, and draw that out insights for other employers. So what do you think other employers might learn from how you go about that, you know, finding the right person for the job, but also making sure that you're not setting someone up for failure. So what might employers, you know, who are watching this webinar, you know, what are some takeaways that they might have out of that experience or your insights?
Well, I think it really does come down to that. So the way we kind of look at recruiting people in is we have an expression of interest list. And this is where people, whether we have current roles or not, young people can submit their resumes in a very much a less formal way of using, say, like an ethical jobs or a seek, which Angela kind of mentioned earlier. That's not the typical approach for the cohort who might approach us. And we really tried to make things as informal as possible, much like Angela was speaking to before, in terms of getting to know the person. So number one, looking at the skills on the resume, looking at their interests, and sometimes they can be more potent than some of the roles the young people have done in the past. And really engagement, direct engagement. So having someone come in to do a site tour, and through that conversational aspect and really getting to know the person, that way we can start to have a view into what they might need some supports with, if they'll fit in with the type of role and the type of site that is. And then further to that, as we start engagement, we use a baseline survey, which gives us a really good snapshot of their involvement in work before, barriers they may have faced, and how we can best address those barriers and, you know, apply flexibility in the workplace to make sure that we're setting this person up for success.
Thanks. All right, so I'm going to pass on. I'm going to move to Rahul, and again, we'll not off the hook, Andy. We'll come back to you. But Rahul, yeah, your role's a little bit different because STREAT is a social enterprise, but you also work with other employers, so you work around this transition. So keen to hear a little bit from you about what STREAT does, but then how you work with other employers.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Lisa. Thanks for having me. So yeah, so it is slightly different. Starting off with what we do at STREAT. So we are a social enterprise that provide work readiness and work experience programs for young people, primarily in the fields of hospitality, but we also have horticulture opportunities for young people as well. So we have a series of cafes. So we've got a big one where I am, which is in Collingwood. That's our main training site. And we have a few throughout the city. So a young person may sign up to do our program, our 8-week program, which is called Fast Track to Work. So through that, they'll do a mixture of work experience in hospitality and horticulture if they would like to experience both. There is some flexibility there, depending on the group size, depending on the shifts available. We're always upfront in building that for the young person as well. So they do across the sections as well. So they'll do the machines, they'll do the front of house, they'll do service, they'll do the kitchen. At our Collingwood site, we have a bakery as well. They get exposed to sort of different patterns, different customers, different staff, really get to build those work experience, work readiness skills to go into employment. We also do a work readiness module with the youth programs team as well. So that'll be something like, it was great to hear Angela talk about interviews. We do a lot of interview practice and prep with the young people, even to those little things like, you know, make sure you dress up on the day, or like, what does that mean to you? Or what do you feel comfortable in? And then we dress up too, and we set it up in a panel and we do all that. So give them that real life experience for when they do transition out. And that transition part that you mentioned, that's kind of the big part for us. So we have the 8-week work experience program. Your young person can come in, do that, give us a thumbs up, say, I really enjoyed it, and I'm going to go do X, Y, Z now. I'm going to go to TAFE. I'm going to leave the country. I'm going to do this. Great. Awesome. We'll support you for that. But we also have another program called Pay to Work. So that's where we have our partner employers lined up who have jobs available for the young people. So what we call successful graduates of Fast Track to Work. So for us, that's hitting your attendance goal, which for everyone is 80%. And then hitting the secondary goal of showing your work readiness, which for everyone is different. And that's a sort of continued conversation from really the start of a young person's journey to the end of, like, you know, what does that look like for you? What are the things we need to see to, you know, make a comfortable referral for you for Pay to Work if you're interested. With that being said, it's actually really great because while the jobs are there with our employers, they're not given, they're not guarantees for the young people, which they're upfront knowing about too. So they know that they have to still perform throughout the program, show that dedication, show that motivation. We sort of set ourselves up and say, hey, look, you know, we have this relationship, this is the program, but realistically what we could get you to is the interview stage. And then from there, we're expecting you to take it on as a mature, responsible person and show us, like open employment, find that you've earned the job, which is great. So we have young people go to the interviews, they do that. Let's say it goes really well, they get offered the position. What's sort of a little bit different is that so with paid to work, we STREAT have that relationship with the employer. The young person would be successful, get the role. The employer is the employer, the young person. It's a completely their relationship. There's no strings attached. We don't get any kickbacks. The employer doesn't get any kickbacks. There's nothing extra. The benefit of it is that STREAT, our team, we stick around sort of as the glue in between. So we sort of communicate with the young person and the employer and ensure everyone's sort of happy, comfortable, keeping that communication strong between the groups. From a lot of our research, and I'm sure the other people here can confirm as well, a lot of young people in open employment or just any employment, they tend to struggle in that sort of like 2-month mark. That 4 to 8 week mark is sort of where you see things get a bit tough or things occur, and it's if you don't have the support there, you're not used to asking for it or where it's available, it might just be easy to drop off. Right? Okay, I don't know how to ask for that day off, or I missed 2 shifts in a row, I don't know how to tell them I was sick or whatever it is. So we can also be that extra support there to go, okay, cool, what do you do when that happens? So we have a young person go, oh, hey, Rahul, X, Y, Z happened, I don't know how to feel about it. What do I do? How do I approach it in a professional way? Or like, what skills do I need to learn from there? Benefit too, we have the employer, and for the employer side, which I think we'll probably get to it too, I think it's really great, is the employer gets an employee, but they also get another support for that employee. So the sort of benefit is that you might have a regular employee, you might go, oh, okay, look, I'm doing my best to support them. I'm not sure if there's more I should be doing or anything else I kind of want to do. Just got to do my best. Whereas with our young people that go into paid to work, it's great. They know, okay, cool. Oh, yeah, that person's going really well, but I did notice this. I'm going to speak to them about it. But then I also know I can speak to Rahul about it, and they can pick it up with them too. And it might be they can maybe support in a way that is not right for me to do so, or can give that wraparound support. That's probably the main difference for us. I should mention, as paid to work, have 2 6-month internal barista slots for young people. So STREAT are also an employer of young people in that regard as well.
So interested, Rahul, in what you've learned from working with those employers. So thinking about the employers that aren't STREAT, that don't sort of live and breathe to look after young people,
Absolutely.
but are doing it. What are some of the key learnings or the key changes they might need to have to consider in their organisations to make them really welcoming workplaces?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good question. I'd probably say the biggest things for me, number one is probably, I don't know if flexibility is the right word. I kind of want to say like openness, kind of having that open mind and like, okay, we can take on young people. And part of that, honestly, is probably, we might get to this too, part of that probably just unpacking a lot of misconceptions that, like, honestly, anyone might have about young people. They might just have these misconceptions like, they don't know what they're doing, they're not going to rock up, all these really negative things, when really, if you flip it, which our employees are really great at, they have that openness of like, oh, great, I'm getting a new employee, I'm getting someone who wants to be here, I'm getting someone who I can train, I'm getting someone who wants to learn, getting someone who may just be having their first like experience in the work in work. Like, okay, great, like what environment can I provide for them? What can we get out of it as well? Probably say that the openness of willing to take a young person or a person on, really, to be honest with you, and give them that time. I would say secondly is that the time, or sort of the commitment, I would say as well. It's really great to have a place that is committed to ensuring that everyone is sort of like on track and their well-being is going well and they want to be there. We wouldn't have the employers if they just said to us, oh, give me 4 people a year, or just let me that, and like it's done, cool, tick the box, we've got 4 people. None of our employers do that. Our employers are really great. They really want to get to know the young people that are coming in and know their needs and what they're sort of aiming for. One of our employers, RACB City Club, the thing I always tell the young people when they're interested in that, I say RACB are great because they actually, one of the questions they always ask in the interview, or they always ask about young people is, cool, like, what are your goals? Like, what are you sort of working towards? Like, what are you looking for in the future? Sort of having that, you're not just getting like this conveyor belt of like employees, you're actually really getting people that want to develop as well, or want to go, oh, like I'm also here to learn, I'm here to build skills. So I'd say that, like, the openness to take young people on, and probably being able to have that commitment to go, okay, cool, like I've got someone here that could potentially be here quite a while, or may want to build their career here, or maybe just want to learn something for a year and a half or longer, and then go, oh, I'm going that way now, and you were part of that journey.
So I think you're describing, in a sense, it's a mindset thing. So I'm not just getting, I'm not just getting a pair of arms and legs. I'm getting a person who I am going to you know, we're going to create an opportunity for. So it's a different mindset from that very transactional
Yeah.
idea of employment.
Yeah.
Are there ever times when there's resistance? So, you know,
Good
where
question.
maybe co-workers, or whether there are problems that emerge in getting there?
That's a good question. I'm just trying to think if in my time there's been what I would call problems. I'd probably say no. The only thing I can think is that it's probably about communication and understanding that for employers and their staff, and even for the young people, that it's probably very particular to what we do as STREAT, being the partnership with the partner employers, is that you're just the same, if that kind of makes sense. Like sometimes there's a bit of confusion about like, oh, is this person more special or less special because they've come as part of Paid to Work or STREAT for all that? And I guess it's really just saying, and that's probably also the label that a lot of young people get too, of like, oh, do I get treated differently because I'm in the bucket of young person as well? And I think really that's kind of like the only issue. And it's not even an issue. It's really just something that comes with the communication and education. Like, and once you sort of get over that, if I've got, like, for instance, if an employer, we've had a great relationship, they get a new store manager, and then that manager is not familiar with the program, they might not go, oh, cool, I actually don't understand what's going on. It's as simple as us educating them, having them come through. We have a session with them. And then from there, it's like, oh, great, I actually understand. It's just the same as everyone else. And I think, yeah, before, the only thing I wanted to add is I think a lot of people think we've got to, oh, I'm getting young people that may be disengaged or may have come from all those intersectionalities. And in Angela said, I've got to do all these like special things. I get this new role, I get this new training, doing this, that. That's great. You should definitely do all that. But I think the other thing is also, you just get another person. As you said, you get another set of arms and legs, another person wants to learn. If you treat them like everyone else and you still give that time and that ability to train, like you actually don't have to put in all these new fancy things and sort of go, oh, cool, now we're set up. You can kind of go, cool, actually. So we've got that time, that openness, we can take on these people and give them a good experience.
So I'm going to come back to you, Angela, and there are a few questions in the chat, but I just want to touch on, I guess, because it flows from this conversation about supervisor skills and how you create a workplace that can support a young person who maybe has limited work experience or might have other things going on in their lives. So, you know, what we find all the time when we talk to young people and through all of our research is that the skills of their supervisor are absolutely critical. And we all know that lots of people end up being supervisors not because they got training or skill, but they actually got there just because they were good at doing whatever they were doing before they became a supervisor. So it's not necessarily an attitude thing, although sometimes it is, but it can just be a skill thing. So I'm really interested in what Youth Projects does to make sure that your people have the skills and the knowledge they need to support young people.
Yeah, but look, we do a lot of work around like human-centered leadership skills. So making sure that our leaders, regardless of their structural level, build their levels of empathy, understand the importance of vulnerability, particularly with Gen Zs, there's higher prevalence of mental health. They're also more comfortable talking about their mental health. So they will come into work and use that supervisor as almost like someone to download to in that space. So it's really helping those leaders build those skills to be able to manage those situations and support young people through those situations. I guess stepping back from that to really get the business and the supervisors on board. The reality is that these young people, although they're, depending on your categorization, under 25, under 30 for now, they're the workforce of the future. So the needs that they have from an employer, what they want from a workforce or a workplace, that's going to continue. And it's actually not going to be that long until they're the majority of all of our workforces. So it's really taking that time now to set up that framework so you've got a workplace that supports your employees in 10, 15 years' time.
That's really interesting, because I think that, yeah, again, one of the things that's remarked on a lot, and we see it in the data, that this generation, particularly the ones, there's a recent study about people who turned 20 in 2020 and how significantly greater their mental health challenges are than previous generations. So I think you know, what you're describing is, in a sense, instead of sort of fighting that and seeing that as a problem of a generation, actually recognizing that in the way you work, but for all people. I think that's again, we're talking mindset shifts here, which is really, really interesting.
It is, but like I think as well, I often just get people to kind of sit back and contemplate. So a recent report came out saying that age group, 55% have diagnosed mental health conditions. So if that's diagnosed, the percentage of undiagnosed is going to be so much more. But I think all of us really struggled during COVID. So coming out of COVID, coming back to the workplace, it's actually not just the young people that need this support. They're really the ones that are making noise and asking for it and demanding it. So when you start to implement these things, you know, building your emotional intelligence and relational intelligence of leaders and having a really robust EAP service and all of those things, the whole workforce thrives.
There's another question. There's a question here for you, Angela, about a development plan. And I think that's for the young recruits coming in. Do you have a particular template or format that you use for that, or is it informal? What do you use?
We have a template, but it's quite an informal template. So we try to keep it to a maximum of 3 things, 3 outcomes that we're aiming for. Development plans can often get very detailed and complex. And what we do with those development plans across the business, we have a real focus on talent management. So it's partnering up those new people, often with emerging leaders or people that have flagged that they want to move into leadership roles, because it's a really safe way for them to build their leadership skills, and gives a neutral connection within the business.
Wow. Okay, that's really interesting. So, Andy, question for you from our audience. What does flexibility in the workplace look like for young people at Good Cycles? And I know others may want to comment on this as well. So what does that flexibility look like? And I guess particularly with that business hat on, right? You still got to keep the stores open and the customers, you know, happy. So what does flexibility look like?
Yeah, very much so. I think I'd start with saying flexibility looks different for every individual young person who comes into the program, and we really keep that at the center of everything we do. For some people, that flexibility might be, say, myself or another youth coach advocating to, you know, a site manager or a supervisor that maybe this young person, because of their background or barriers they may have faced, might only really be suited to, say, a 4-day week. It could also look like a different shift time, you know, advocating for a later start if this young person is traveling a long time via public transport. And on that one thing that we've really kind of detailed into the program is flexibility around things like, often most employment opportunities will list something like a driver's license as a minimum. The great thing about our programs and being able to deliver a good portion of them on a bike means that that's just not something that we need to have. So we really start from the recruitment stage with that kind of flexibility built in. But really that flexibility is often the youth employment team working with an amazing collection of managers and site supervisors that really, you know, we all come to work to do the same thing, which is supporting young people and all people in the organization to, you know, find meaning in their work. And, you know, from that, it can take so many forms in terms of that flexibility, but often it is mainly around the youth employment team advocating for something that maybe a young person isn't quite comfortable or confident enough to raise with a manager. But yeah, it can take so many forms really, but also still keeping in mind, you have to balance those scales of, we are a business and we do have contracts to service and maintain and make sure that work is being done on time and to a high standard as well. So it's really this ever-evolving process of kind of referencing what needs to be done, who we've got on the ground. You know, do we need to plan in some redundancy in terms of like if people are off sick? I guess another thing on that point is a lot of our young people can actually communicate if they're off sick or for a mental health day via email or text, or by contacting a youth coach as well, just to break down those barriers, because I think it's one thing that I'm assuming we may have all have experienced in past workplaces where you've got to make that call, and there's often a lot of anxiety around saying, hey, I just can't come in today. So really, you know, that kind of flexibility. Often in the traditional workplace, you know, we prefer a phone call and for someone to, you know, show up in that way. But we find that the overarching thing that we need to achieve is just that communication of if someone's going to be in and fit for the job on that day, and if not, let's put something else in place to really mitigate the you know, the emotional side of things that can be quite challenging.
So it's partly about making that communication really, really easy. So at least you're a bit more predictable, a bit more predictable. Do either Rahul or Angela want to comment on this question about flexibility?
I was just going to jump in. I think that was all the stuff Andy shared was really great. One big thing I really see is young people are hungry for information. And I think we employers see flexibility as this really structured thing, and sometimes it can't happen for whatever reason, whether it's the type of job or servicing clients or whatever the reason may be. And it's just about communicating that really clearly to the employee, and saying, look, you know, no, you can't start work at 11 o'clock. But what we could do is move the morning meeting till 9:30 because of ABC reasons. So it's just having that back and forth and explaining to them why. Not flexibility, but we see a really similar thing with conversations around salary, where someone's friend's cousin earns an amazing salary, and walking them through that, explain salary benchmarking, explain how they can go and look at what, you know, whatever it is, salary, flexibility, whatever they're wanting, so that they can actually see real world what's happening out there.
So we've got quite a few questions coming through, so I'm going to try to get through a few. One of them's just come up through, which relates a bit to this flexibility question. So when you have people who have mental health challenges, at the moment they're applying for sick leave, right? So you've got a limited amount of sick leave. I guess there's a question from one of the audience members about, do any of you have more flexibility around or additional you know, forms of leave for people who might have mental health or psychiatric disabilities?
We do for everyone. So we provide an additional 5 days wellbeing leave, which is paid out the same, well, in a similar way as personal leave. So there's no accruals or payouts at the end of employment. But it's also as well having those conversations around options. Is there the option? Could they work from home? Sometimes when people are having a bad mental health day, they just don't feel like they can present to the workplace. So it's kind of, you know, they might have that day off and then chat to them about it and find out if there's different options in the future of, you know, how that could be managed.
And Rahul, did you?
Yeah. I was just going to say it's a good one, because it comes up a lot, probably not just for young people in employment as well, but I know, speaking just from my experience at STREAT and with our paid to work partners across the board, like they're actually really great, really proactive. And I'm just thinking, like, you know, we had a recent example where a young person, you know, let the employer know, like, oh, hey, actually, like, I've got a few, I'm having some impacts on my mental health, and I want to take a bit of a break. And like, what does that look like? And they're able to together to go, oh yeah, cool. Like, what does it look like without, you know, like, there was no like freak out, no like, oh, you can't do that, or you have to do this way or this way. It was more the employer really just put it to the young person, like, okay, cool, like, let us know what works for you. Young person said, cool, I want to do a few less shifts, I need a bit of a break. Okay, great. went back to shifts, go, oh, this is still not working for me. All right, cool. Let's take a longer break, make sure you're supported. All our employees off. We offer an EAP too to all young people that are still connected with us. All our employees did the exact same as well. They really get on board with that, like, wraparound support. We've had other instances where a young person might just go, oh, I need the extended break, and I want to be sort of in charge of, like, letting you know when I can come back. Employees go, cool, no worries, as long as you keep us in the loop. I think common theme with that is, communication, like just feeling like you can do it, for one, feeling like you're safe and comfortable with your employer and supports that you can do it. And then two, as well, just knowing you're going to be listened to, when you go, okay, cool, I actually can be honest as so I think Andy or Angela, I forget who said, some days they're just not going to present. Some days it just may be too much to go, I can go into work today. And, once again, I did have that conversation with a young person, they're going, oh, I just couldn't go in, just all this stuff going on. Okay, cool. Like, you can actually tell us that and also have a day off and say that. The reason that was kind of like, oh, I didn't know. Like, I didn't know I could be like, oh, actually, mental health stuff's going on. I want to take a bit of a break. And it was, so even that is part of the education piece, I guess, for young people as well, knowing, like, they can sort of have that honesty or that vulnerability to go, oh, actually, this is happening. And what do we do? Like, a good employer and a good support system will work it out for you, not sort of just go, oh, okay, sorry, nah, mate, can't do it. Or no, that's like, you've not ticked that box now. So I think most employers do a really good job of that. And I think just, getting them, making sure that's at the forefront as well, especially when it comes to young people who may be doing it for their first time. As I said, it is hard to make that call or that decision for the first time.
Yeah, look, it really strikes me that there's a generational question, because we know that young people are more comfortable talking about mental health than older generations. So if you've got, and some of the employers we work with have got older workforces, so there's less generational mix, you can sort of imagine that there are some challenges there in trying to get to that point. And yet it would open up the possibilities for a whole bunch of other people who might be struggling with mental health in the workplace. So I'm going to come to another question here right early. Thank you for waiting, Harry. So there's been a fair bit of discussion about relationships, and Harry's comment is a lot of young people communicate online and build relationships online. So he's interested in whether any of you use any other technological solutions during that getting to know you phase. So do you use some form of technology to communicate with people outside the sort of face-to-face in that early stage? Anyone want to jump in?
I'll jump in. Nothing kind of outside of normal business. So across the company, we use Teams and emails and text and all of that kind of stuff. Nothing outside of that. I actually find that face-to-face interaction really important. And that could just be within teams, like saying to someone, hey, this new person started, can you make sure that you invite them to come have lunch with you all this week? And ask them questions. So it's kind of managing that situation to make it safe for them and making sure that they're engaged with the team.
Rahul, there's one here for you, and it might, and we can come, if you want to comment on the other one, please do. But Paul's asked, you mentioned keeping communication lines open, and that he's finding potential employees just stop messaging and won't return calls. Have you found that? And I guess the next obvious question is, what do you do? What's the response to it?
Yeah, absolutely. I can definitely sympathize with Paul. I think once again, not just young people, but I think working with anyone, and there's recruiting, and even in general, sometimes people just won't get back to you, or there can be difficulties. We are kind of, if I do keep it to the young people that we work with, we're kind of lucky in the sense that, with the communication, the relationship building, we've done a lot of work from like the start, if that makes sense. So when the young person sort of first comes into the program, we're kind of like getting to know who their support network is, if they exist. If they don't, we're linking them into supports. So it's actually very rare, and I struggle to even think of a young person that we have in a program or has been through a program that we didn't have enough support for, if that made sense. Like, we didn't have someone else who was connected with them. We could be like, oh, hey, hang on a minute, XYZ's not getting back to me. Like, how do I get onto them? Is there an update? Is everything okay? We always have the emergency contact. More sort of to Paul's point as well, sometimes that's what worked well with the employer, is that, you may have the situation where the support that we offer is really great, because we may have a situation where the young person's going, yeah, everything's great, 10 out of 10, enjoying, I'm smashing it, awesome. And then the employer goes, oh, hang on a minute, they missed 2 shifts actually, they haven't rocked up this whole week. Like we didn't hear from them. Have you heard from them? Can you give us an update? So sometimes it's about that, and then sort of getting that across to the young person as well. I guess the hardest thing is if you have someone, a potential employee, and you've got this great opportunity for them, or this thing that you want to link them in, and they're not getting back to you as well. I guess what is the hardest thing to do is you sometimes have to accept that as an answer as well, maybe, and just think, okay, cool, like this is not the right time or opportunity for this person. Maybe it will help, or I don't know, but sometimes, often that can happen with young people, and then sometimes role. Actually, the beautiful thing is that maybe in some time, those people actually end up coming back, and they go, oh, actually, you know what? Just this was going on. I was trying to deal with it, or this was happening. I wasn't ready yet, and I'm back now for this opportunity. So yeah, I'm trying to say there is hope for you, Paul, as well, hopefully. But yeah, just keep at it. And then if you can do any of the foundational work you can do up the front, and the more you can do with that, and the more sort of set you are with that person, their networks, or like their needs as well, makes it easier. But it doesn't work all the time, unfortunately.
So peer mentoring could be part of that too, right? Say having someone in the organisation similar age who you connect with, or just the next stage up. And did either Andy or Angela want to comment on that one?
Yeah, it's similar to what Rahul was saying. I think, if we sometimes will one of the site managers will get in touch with our youth employment team, which we're really lucky to have that resource to be able to follow up with a young person. But I've found in terms of keeping those communication lines open as being, the most important part, is often when I'll check in with a young person who maybe hasn't turned up to work for 1 day, 2 days, they're often quite surprised that someone's checking in on them, especially through past experiences of workplaces where it might be 0 to low tolerance in terms of absences. Often when the young people pick the phone up, they'll be pleasantly surprised that it's no one's calling to kind of follow up on why they weren't at work. It's more a matter of like, is everything okay with you? And that is often a real turning point for a lot of our young people, where they just feel quite refreshed by that approach. And it really goes a long way in terms of helping them feel that they have value and that they're missed as a person, not just an employee.
Yeah, so interesting. Angela, did you want to comment?
I was just going to jump in and say, like, I think a big part of this as well is really important for us to step back and check our unconscious bias. I think often we imagine young people are going to be unresponsive and not punctual, but often these behaviours are seen across the whole workforce. For whatever reason, whether it's through recruitment or after recruitment, there will be staff that don't turn up or abandon employment or call in sick regularly on Mondays. But we often, when, there's a small minority group in a workplace, we really notice it.
Rahul? Yeah.
Sorry, yeah. Also, that thing that occurred to me as well, I want to add, just in our particular model as well of the STREAT Youth Program, and then to the Paid to Work program with the employers, what helps with that communication, and to Paul's question as well, is that we have an MOU with the employers, so like a memorandum of understanding, no like legal binding contract, just obviously this document of what we're providing and what they're taking on and the mutual obligations we agree on, which is great, because within that we've got, STREATs, we're going to keep that contact strong with the young person. We offer up to 9 months of support. We're going to have 3, 6, 9 month check-ins with yourself and the young person. We'll provide your manager's support as well. We'll invite you to our PDs, that you're going to have our contact details. So that's also like that layer of support that the employer knows, okay, cool, if the young things are going sideways with the young person or they're not responding, okay, cool, I know I just pick up the phone to Rahul, or they're probably already on the phone to me letting me know. And the great thing is that we sort of, the 8-week program before Paid to Work is kind of to get the young person ready for all of that. So, in your dream scenario, these things aren't happening because the young person has modeled it and experienced that and learned from it there. But that's not to say if these things happen, it's a bad thing to me necessarily. I don't think it is at all. I think it's actually a great step for the young person to learn. And we also have that agreement with the young person. So when they enter Paid to Work, we also sit down with them and say, hey, these are the things you agreed to. You agreed to sort of catch up with us. You agreed to keep the communication strong. That's going to be, you're giving us that to be part of Paid to Work. The job is your job. You're going to perform the task there, but this is sort of what you're agreeing to with us so that we can keep the communication strong between all three, I guess. Yeah.
So we have many more questions, and what we'll do is we'll take them down and we'll see if we can answer some of them offline or figure out a way of dealing with them. I am tempted to, I'm going to do it. It's probably not wise. We might go over, but there's a question here about resumes and the use of resumes. So I'm going to ask you just for a minute on resumes before I close, but literally quick, like what do you think about resumes? How do you use them? Are they useful in this context? What? Maybe Angela. Maybe I'll pass to Angela, and then
I don't think anyone knows how to write resumes. We're really about the cover letter. Really educate young people, both the ones that we employ and the ones we work with. Your cover letter is there to sell yourself. So I think resumes, people can have very different templates. A lot of them are being done on Canva now. Some are fine. From a recruitment perspective, they're all a bit the same. So it's really reading that cover letter and getting to know the person behind the resume.
Yeah.
Because people will have done qualifications or had specific jobs and list the skills that you've put in your job ad. They'll just mirror it in their resume.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, really interesting. Look, I'm going to ask each of you if you want to make a final comment before we close. Thank you so much for that. But any final comments before we finish up?
No, I would just say, if there's any employers or anyone interested, obviously feel free to reach out to any of us if you want to take the conversation offline. You want more information, but I don't think anyone here is scared of young people, but I think they're it's a very still untapped resource and sector of society, especially for the workforce. And I think Angela said, this is the future workforce as well. And if you take on that mindset that you're actually giving someone an opportunity and you can kind of provide that training and that positive intro to the workforce, there's really nothing better for that person and honestly for your organization, no matter what the field is. Yeah.
Andy, did you want a final comment?
And I think just tying it all up, what I've really found is considering how we can make workplaces more accessible and more flexible, but also zooming out and going, can we do this for the whole workforce as well? I feel like the things we often consider for young people or people facing barriers can be totally spread across the organization to everyone's benefit.
That's it. And Angela?
Look, my last point, 80 years ago, there weren't women in the workplace. So all businesses, regardless of sizes, can transform and adapt and create space for different groups. And I just think it's making the conscious choice to do that, however big or small.
Look, thank you, the three of you. Fantastic conversation. And, I've learned lots, and I'm hopefully, and the audience obviously got lots of questions that we haven't quite got to answer to. But yeah, really, really grateful for your time and for sharing your wisdom from your work. I want to say to anyone in the webinar who's interested in doing some more work on this, that we have an Employer Innovation Lab starting in May in Sydney. So we're looking for employers that want to work on a project within their own workplace to attract and engage young people. So please get in touch if you're interested. But I want to thank you for coming along and for your attention, and and see you in the next one. Thank you.